Good Tuesday morning, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast as we're officially into game week mode and getting ready for Tennessee and Georgia State. So the podcast on game weeks moves until Tuesday morning. So glad to have you along with us with Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. I'm Brent Hubbs. Plenty to get to. Let's start first, guys, with Bryce Thompson, suspended indefinitely. And I think the key word here is indefinitely. I don't think that's rhetoric. I think this is one of those deals where some of this is out of the control of Jeremy Pruitt. A lot of it's out of the control of Jeremy Pruitt. We'll see what the University, Austin, has to say and kind of what way they go about this. Bryce remains in school. For those who have wondered about that, he's still in school. He's a student going to class. He's suspended from team activities indefinitely right now.
Yeah, and just the right move for right now. I mean, you don't need him against Georgia State anyway. Let's see, once he gets through, his court date next Monday or Tuesday, where things stand from there. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he's back, for BYU. But obviously, some of this stuff is out of the control of the people over there in the football complex.
I think go ahead, Jesse.
Well, I was going to say, I think the court date is hurdle one, and then if the charges do get dropped, the next hurdle is the university and kind of the student code of conduct and the alleged statement of shooting up this school, right? I mean, that's going to be, in talking to folks, that is much more, I think, seriously being discussed and kind of the ramifications of that versus kind of a spat that did not involve any physical violence with his girlfriend.
Well, and I think that what's unusual about this from a university standpoint is it's unprecedented so what do you do when someone makes that statement? Is that a legitimate threat towards the student body? How do you, and I think from the university standpoint, I think you have to look at it as you're establishing a benchmark. You're setting a precedent here on how you go about this, not just for student athletes. It's not about student athletes, it's for all students. If someone gets mad in the library and says something, we were talking about this off there. If somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I'm going to take a flamethrower to this place because they're mad, they can't find the research stuff that they need, and it's finals week and they're stressed out or whatever," are you going to dismiss everybody from school that says something in haste that way, or do you take that and investigate those people to make sure that there's not some real viable threat based on the statement that they made? I think that's what nobody is really sure of, because this is uncharted waters for the university. I don't know, it's not happened at Tennessee publicly where someone is claimed to have said this statement and everybody knows it in a police report. So I think that's the part where everybody's trying to figure out where the university is on it. I think the university's trying to figure out what their protocol is on this.
Because it's a liability issue. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
It's a huge hot button issue. I mean, in the current climate that we live in. I mean, it's not, me and Jesse were talking about it driving in today. I mean, whether you actually, think Bryce Thompson was just, furious and spouting off, I mean, given what's happened in this country over the past year, you can't ignore that if you're a public institution like Tennessee.
Right. So the question is, do you take every claim like that and have an immediate reaction to it, or do you take a claim like that and investigate it?
I don't think there's sure nobody at this table, and I don't think there's anybody that can throw stones and say they've not said something out of frustration over the years that they didn't really mean. It just went for the easiest thing was to go for the jugular in a verbal spat, and then 20 minutes later you're like, okay, that was stupid. I just think that's natural for every one of us to get frustrated. You get frustrated with your kids when they're disobeying you out in public and making you look like a fool. You get frustrated with your wife or your girlfriend or your husband or your boyfriend, whatever. I just think, is it right? No. Should he said he was going to smack the crap out of his girlfriend? No. But at the same time, people make mistakes. We all make mistakes.
But again, I've said this publicly. I don't think from a university standpoint that's the issue. From a bigger picture standpoint, I think that will be settled.
I agree, but
the issue.
I'm lumping both comments together.
Yeah, but I think they're both separated.
Different.
I think they're very different because I think
very different.
I think the one that's directed at the girlfriend is a misdemeanor, quote, criminal case that's going to get solved in a court of law. The other, there's not a criminal case involved there. There's no charge against him there. But as a public institution, someone makes this statement. How do you approach that from there? And again, we're going to get into the game in just a second, but from a university standpoint, How do you approach somebody who makes that makes a
Bryce
statement
says
like
he doesn't do it. Girlfriend says she don't remember if he said it or not. And then you got the other people that are involved that says or the one person says he did say it. That's a he said, she said.
You get two other people who said they heard it, but they can't ID him as saying it. But it happened at the same time. I know, I agree with you. But one of those he said, she said in there is the RA, who's the dorm director, who probably is going to carry a little bit more weight than a random
But that
eyewitness.
person's not the one that saw him, though. They're saying that person's right, correct?
No, the hall director was one of the witnesses.
That said that they heard him say it, but they weren't sure it came from his mouth. It was the RA.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think from the standpoint,
The semantics of that, though, are less important than
what's the university's policy.
How serious does the
stance?
university take a statement like that in general, and what is the potential ramifications going to be, whether it was Bryce Thompson or someone at the library that says such a deal? Because if whatever they decide will set a precedent at this school moving forward. And hypothetically, if Bryce is allowed back, none of us in this room think that Bryce would actually go shoot up somebody. But if he did, this university would cease to exist because it would be sued out of oblivion because the precedent would have been set.
So
that's the challenge that this school's dealing with.
And that's what I wanted to explain to people, or try to explain to people who are asking this question on the board. It's not a Bryce Thompson versus the school deal. This is a precedent-setting deal. Why the university is going to look at this and why it may take longer than people want or everything else, because they are having to decide, okay, what's policy here? Are you going to throw anybody out of school who makes a random statement? Are those random statements, do they give you the right to go search warrant somebody's dorm room, or somebody's car or their backpack because you have some sort of reasoning, just cause to go do that? Those are all things that the legal side of the university is looking in, and that's why that phrase has so many people on the athletic side and even the university unsure of what direction they're going to go with things because it hasn't been broached before. So that's the Bryce Thompson deal. There'll be plenty more of that moving forward. Again, he goes to court regarding the comments towards the girlfriend. That takes place next week, and then we'll see what the chancellor and the student conduct people do in regards to the other comments. All right, let's jump into football, okay? Without Bryce Thompson there, Warren Burrell, we think, starts at corner?
I do. I think based off of...
Because you want to leave Schamberger at star?
Yeah, and based off the fact that, he's been running as kind of the third corner this entire time and has had a really good fall camp.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think you don't want to mess. You've got Schamberger playing at a level he hasn't played at, apparently, for the last 10 days or so. I don't think you want to mess with that. You want to keep that one going in the right direction, because if you believe you're going to get Bryce Thompson back, or Warren Burrell's going to come on, that star position is so important to you. I don't think you want to mess with a guy whose confidence, quite frankly, since his career has been here, has been a roller coaster when you talk about Sean Schamberger.
Absolutely. And you're not going to have Danny Batuli at linebacker, so I think there's a real chance that Tennessee starts at least two freshmen on defense Saturday. I think, Henry T is going to start at the will, and Warren Burrell's going to take Bryce's spot outside at corner.
And then when you factor in, potentially Durrell or Savion, as far as pure newcomers, I mean, the defense could be, 4 guys maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if Solomon does not get the green light, I think it is probably Durrell and Savion's fighting with Matthew Butler to get that first snap.
Hard to believe that you're sitting here looking at this, Rob, and you think about what they've lost for this opener. Again, Georgia State, but what they've lost in terms of, you can argue their three best defensive players for the opener.
Your best player at each level.
Yeah. And
arguably.
And now you're looking at Henry as the quarterback of your defense, because I think you're probably, based on Jeremy's comments, feel better about him managing calls and checks and everything else as a three-down linebacker than you do Will Ignat or whoever else would be there for Batuli.
I don't think there's any question about that. As crazy, which says something about a couple of different people.
Well, it says a lot about Henry. I mean, I think you got to give the credit to Henry and the development that he has and what he's gotten done.
Especially since he didn't ride until June.
Well, I think what you learn about Henry is he did a lot of homework before he ever got here in June. In terms of playbook study and install study, and I think he
landed with Batuli and those guys.
Yeah, I think he hit the ground running in June, having a pretty good early feel for just the foundation of the defense and the basics there. So, but he's going to be out there. He's going to start, and then we'll see how many of these guys are going to rotate and how many guys are going to play. Pruitt's talking about playing everybody, it sounds like. How many people does Derek Ansley and Jeremy Pruitt play on defense? I think we all agree up front, everybody's going to get a shot, right?
Well, when you throw in Roman and Quavaris Crouch, those guys are going to play because they're going to beat Georgia State pretty handily. Those guys are going to get a lot of runs Saturday. So there's going to be a lot of true freshmen that play Saturday. Which with that new 4-game rule that they put in before last season, makes sense. Get those guys some run.
Where do they go? Where do they go with safety behind? Look, we talked about the corners. Okay, we got Burrell. You got Alante Taylor, and then you're probably going to look at like a guy like Kenny Solomon. The Means kid.
Sounds like Jeremy's pretty high on him.
Okay, where do they go at safety behind Nigel and Trayvon Flowers?
I think it's Theo's the first guy up.
Theo, but I'm going to tell you who's coming from talking to some people, and I was told this weekend, you're not going to be a huge factor the first few weeks, but by midseason, they really think Tyus Fields can be a real factor at safety in the 2 deep, not a starter,
right.
But a guy that
he's
if
safety
they
all the way because there's some thought maybe nickel or
loves to. He's like Roman Harrison. I was told that like they've had to
he's the contact guy in the back.
Yes, to the point they've had to okay, you're out. You can't be leading with your head. I mean, these are your teammates. This is we appreciate your zest for wanting to go just obliterate somebody, but obliterate somebody. You're going to end up with targeting and be kicked out of games if you play like that.
It's interesting because that's not a name we've heard a ton about.
It isn't.
Fields.
It isn't.
That's a good note.
It isn't, and it's noteworthy too that the McCullough buzz died pretty quickly in fall camp. After he was a guy that I think had some juice when
we
he
had
was
the
here
2 picks in the spring.
Yeah, he was here in the spring, and there was lots of buzz, and he was not a name that generated a ton of news, both publicly or privately. I mean, if Tennessee, I know Jeremy says they're going to play a bunch of guys, but if Tennessee has its way, they would like to basically just play Nigel and Trayvon and rotate.
Trayvon needs the working.
Yeah, and just rotate in Theo, situationally or for spot snaps.
Oh, you're talking about throughout the season.
Throughout the season,
that would be
their
3 safeties.
Unless
Fields takes Theo's spot, and he could, depending on how much reps, how much run he gets, and how successful he is in a couple of games, you never know with that because we know Theo Jackson has ridden a roller coaster since he's been here. The Beasley, there's the biggest talk about Beasley, Aaron Beasley, has been the move to linebacker. There's not been any real buzz about him all preseason, has there?
No, and he's a guy that I think, we'll see what Tyus does, but both of them, when in my 10 things, I think they're guys that are they're going to give them snaps on special teams, and that may be it this year. But you know what? For where Tennessee's depth is, and the fact that Jeremy has made it no secret that he's trying to go after roster speed, and I think that's going to be their role early on, and then can they kind of find a niche down the road?
All right, let's jump over to the offensive side of the ball. When you look at this, Rob, the Oars have it on the offensive line.
Say on both lines of scrimmage. You're talking
the defensive part's not a surprise, though.
Are you saying Orr's finally playing for Tennessee?
Yeah, I guess he is.
But the blind side.
But offensively, look. Brandon Kennedy's going to start at center.
Yes.
I think we're all going to agree that Marcus Tatum's going to start at one of the tackle spots. Okay, so there's 2. Trey Smith, we believe, is going to start. If he's taking contact for 2 days and that's going okay, I get Jeremy Pruitt doesn't want to get into guaranteeing himself for anything because I guess Austin, that's going to be what numbers look like from a medical standpoint into the week, right? As a part of this protocol, this plan they have in place to get him. There's some medical things late in the week they're going to have. He's going to have to pass to get on the field, correct?
It's going to be a weekly thing, I would think.
Correct. Trey will,
he'll have to have some tests.
There's going to be very little contact during the week,
right,
all season long. There's an offensive lineman in the NFL that plays with this similar type condition.
Okung has not played
He's
yet.
not played.
He's not played.
He has not played a single preseason game.
He is planning on Russell Okung for the San Diego Chargers, is what we're talking about.
Okay. And so, point is the plan is for him to play. He's been working towards that. He was full contact on Saturday. They've been trying to kind of, do a little bit of a practice run. I thought they would practice this before a scrimmage, but I guess feel like they can control it a little bit more in a set practice to kind of give it a test run. So,
So essentially, at the end of last week, they kind of put him in a game week mode.
Yes.
Late last week, do whatever you need to do from the medical standpoint to play on Saturday, back on your regiments, whatever you need to do, and roll through it this week.
That's correct.
It's kind of the plan there.
Well, to Rob's point, I mean, it could change every week.
Right. Which is why I think Jeremy Pruitt's going to probably go all season long calling him a game time decision.
Yeah, which makes that
which is not a lie.
No, it just makes the O-line situation all that much trickier.
Yeah. What do you think they do at tackle? You think it's Wanye Morris to start left tackle?
I sort of lean that way. It just seems like in the stuff we've watched, it seems like he's.
It will not be Jameer Johnson.
Well, Jameer hadn't been practicing, so
Jameer's not practiced the last several days, and so that's more of just you need to eat and get bigger.
Get your rear ending gear type deal.
Yeah.
Little message.
The kid plays hard, and you can't question his toughness. But he looks like a tight end when you see him out there with it. I think you roll the dice.
I think it depends on what happens with Marcus Tatum. Tatum could start at right.
Right.
That means Wanye starts at left, or Tatum could start at left, which means Darnell starts at right. I think one true freshman of the tackles start.
How scary for this coaching staff did the idea of starting a freshman? It's always nerve-wracking. Did it get scarier because of what happened Saturday night?
Florida kept
It
racking
makes it a
up
little
10
easier
sacks.
when you're playing Georgia State and you're not.
Right, but
Florida.
when you're thinking BYU the next week and everything else, aren't you a little more like, Florida's good off the edge. There's no question about that. Georgia State's not that. It is much easier to play, and you're going to play one. One of those guys has got to play well this week for Tennessee, though, to give you a little confidence, I think, going into BYU with them. You're going to play both of them this week. Who starts this week is not as big a deal as who starts next week in terms of what freshman, whether it's Darnell on the right or Wanye Morris on the left.
Yeah, for me, this week's going to be all about, we'll do all of my piece, upon further review on Sunday, and then the PFF thing early in the next week. It's going to be all about snap counts for a bunch of those offensive linemen. How many snaps does Calvert play at right guard versus Jerome Carvin?
Or Riley
Locklear. Like, what is that?
Ryan Johnson. What
does what does that look like, and how do they perform in those snaps? And again, we kind of talked about this late last week. I think this is going to be, and you're certainly setting yourselves up for some potential concerns, but this is going to basically be a 3-week deal. Where
3-week trial.
Yeah, Tennessee's going to shuffle these guys all around and then head to Gainesville with what they believe to be, at that moment in time, their best 5.
Week 2 might not be as much experimenting against BYU, but you're right. Out of the 3 weeks, you're gonna.
It depends on how much they learn this week.
Right, you're gonna shuffle it as much.
And I meant to ask Jeremy this today, and I forgot. What do we make of Jeremy Banks? He's back on the tailback depth chart today.
I think he's still playing linebacker.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I think too.
I think he's going to play special teams, and that's probably where you're going to see Jeremy
I think that was
Banks.
a UT Sports Info depth chart, and they just forgot to white out that one name and put him on the linebacker spot.
But I don't think he's going to be it doesn't appear that he's going to be a major factor at linebacker, and it doesn't appear he was going to be a major factor at running back.
No,
right
it looked
now.
like Eric Gray had.
Does it?
I 100%. I am in that camp to believe that I don't think Jeremy Banks. He definitely was not going to be a big factor at running back. He was running 4th. But for Pruitt to come out there on whatever it was Friday and be like, Jeremy Banks is one of our best players. We're going to put him on defense, and he's going to play a lot. I just don't see. I don't see how. Maybe you can just have him run around out there, but we've heard from multiple coaches that this scheme can be difficult, this preseason. And, you're already playing a freshman probably a lot in Henry T. I think they want to get a guy like Shannon Reed a bunch of reps, because if you're unsure about Batuli's knee, you're going to want Reed to be able to be that, extra nickel linebacker. So,
well, remember this about Banks. When they moved him to linebacker last year, what was we don't have anybody like that over there was kind of the early word comments, All of a sudden it was, the buzz behind the scenes was basically like he was going to start after practicing 4 days there, and he didn't last it. He was never
moved right back to running back.
Right, he was never a factor there. So I think you got to be a little bit careful with some of that stuff. We'll see how quick he kind of picks things up and goes from there. I was surprised that again, sports information's involved. I don't know if David Johnson, Jeremy Pruitt's involved. that there was no brackets on the running back chart. Now, I don't believe the running back chart because they had Eric Gray at the bottom of the running back chart, and I don't believe he's the number 4 tailback on this roster. I think he's going to play ahead of that. But I was a little surprised to see Ty Chandler listed as the clear-cut starter for Tennessee at tailback. They're going to play all of those guys. I think it's going to be fascinating to see who generates the buzz out of that position Saturday. Don't you guys?
Well, Georgia State was pretty bad, so it could be all 3 of them.
Well, it could be, but I do think it's going to be one of those, and maybe it is all 3 of them do that. But is it Gray that's getting the buzz that we heard early in fall camp? Does he get more carries?
You're right. And again,
are they going to keep it
Tim
simple?
Jordan continues to be the forgotten guy, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets double-digit carries.
Well,
that's just the way his career's gone.
Well, but remember this too, Austin. I think this is important. Jeremy Pruitt said on Monday in his press conference, "Hey, we're going to keep it simple, both sides of the ball, and let them play fast." I bet if you got Jim Chaney in the office, close the door and ask him what's your priorities for this weekend. Show very little, and we're going to screw our cleats in the ground, and we're going to come off the ball and hit somebody.
I would guarantee you.
First play is a run off tackle. Second play is going to be a dive to the right.
I mean, won't you be surprised if play number 1's anything other than an off tackle run?
Sure. I don't think. We've all seen Chaney these last 2 weeks of fall camp.
It's always open.
He has ramped it up. He's been in the offensive line all over him. We've heard from different people that he's taken a not that he's not always involved in the meetings, but that he's taken even a bigger off the field role in terms of running, being involved in the meetings, being confrontational in meetings along with being instructive. So I don't think there's any doubt that that's his priority going into the year.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to show a whole lot other than he wants to.
A lot of split zone on Saturday.
Right.
A lot of split zone.
It was a lot of these guys coming off the ball. So plenty to look at and plenty to learn coming out of this weekend, regardless of who the opponent is. Even though Jeremy Pruitt had plenty of high praise for his buddy at Georgia State.
Yeah, I was going to say the only other thing that I thought was mildly surprising, and AP could maybe even comment on this, was that. Obviously, we know that DWA is the head and above everyone else at tight end. But the fact that those were the only 2, I think, freshman newcomers that weren't listed, that maybe some people thought. We know Jackson Lampley's going to redshirt. That's been a known, but they weren't listed at all on the sports information, depth chart we got, which I thought was kind of mild. I thought that was mildly interesting since the guys behind DWA seem to just be in a muddled pack. Right. Sometimes it'll be Pope, sometimes it'll be Craig, sometimes it'll be Jackson Lowe, sometimes it'll be Warren, So, and now they're going to play on Saturday. I just thought that was something that kind of caught my eye.
I think it's just because you're kind of like the defensive line and even
it's all the same.
Pruitt kind of let them in. They're all kind of the same guy. It's same thing with the tight end. They're all kind of. They really are. It's like DWA is way up here, and then everybody else is just like together. Could be Andrew Craig. Could be Pope. I'll say this: Pope's healthier than he's been in some time. He didn't have to miss any of fall camp. So, the offensive line. You talk about adding bodies. Lampley's healthy, and you're right. Expect him to redshirt, but Chris Okporogene's missed all of fall camp with a hamstring. And so that's another body that's off the board for the offensive line that maybe you were hoping would at least be able to.
You were curious to see what he was going to look like from a size standpoint. Curious to see what he could do.
Another guy, I had this in my 10 things. AP thought to somebody else this weekend that seemed to also kind of add even some more credence and info to what I had. I think another guy, now we'll see how many opportunities he gets, but he was listed as right behind Josh Palmer on the 2 deep. The buzz continued. The late camp, early preseason buzz, it's kind of come out of nowhere, too, in the last 7 or 8 days on Ramel Keaton.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny. T. Barton privately has told some people that Ramel's really come on. He's really high on where he's at right now. And when the T. Martin met with the media for the first time, his first meeting, there was not a lot of love for Ramel Keaton at that point in time. But he certainly seems to have found his groove and found his rhythm a little bit. You're going to see him on Saturday. All right, let's jump to some recruiting right quick. There won't be a ton of visitors in this weekend, but there will be at least one official visitor in.
Yep,
That's
Plymouth Whitehead, and Tennessee's hoping to establish themselves as the preeminent team to beat in this. I mean, they are the team to beat right now.
They lock it up. Is that realistic? He's going to take.
He's going to take more visits, and that, I mean, like, I guess anything could happen, but I mean, like, at no point has he ever even hinted at the possibility of pulling the trigger this weekend. He wants to take some visits, and Texas, South Carolina, those type teams are in the mix for Lennox. Tennessee covets him very much.
And Tennessee seems to be in a pretty good spot with him right
They're
now.
in a great spot, not too far from home. Mom likes it here, and her coming up this weekend's big for Tennessee.
Anybody else unofficially? I know that's very. People need to understand unofficial visits during the fall with high school games are such subject to change because if a kid loses a game on Friday night, he doesn't want to go somewhere on Saturday, or if he twists his ankle, needs to get treatment.
They hope to get like Jay Hardy up here.
Yeah, Jay Hardy, Jalen Hyatt's going to be in town, which is good because, I mean, with the whole thing with Bryce right now, and that's his buddy.
Right.
I think it's big to get him back up here.
Yeah, he had a big week, by the way, right?
81 total yards. He's caught 3 touchdowns, though.
That's what I mean. That's a pretty big week. May not have been a huge number of yards. Pretty big week in high school football when he brings.
Yeah, Harrison threw for 5. Bunch of them went to top Tennessee target Eric Gilbert. Ojulari had a couple sacks.
Gilbert put on a pretty good show.
Yes, he did.
He certainly shows that he's got enough hands to play wide receiver. That's for sure. All right, nothing else of note on the recruiting front right now, which is not surprising.
I mean, the dead period ends. It'll start to pick up a little bit, as we enter September, because the dead period ends Saturday.
And coaches can get out and start evaluating when they want to.
Right.
I would imagine Tennessee, Austin will use that Chattanooga weekend to eval some.
Yeah, no doubt.
They'll be out and about some there. I don't know how much they'll be out Friday night of the BYU game, but I would think Chattanooga weekend they would be out and about quite a bit. They'll probably be in Florida some the Friday before the Florida game as well, depending on that kickoff time. So start to pick up there from an evaluation, kind of if your board's moving around a little bit, and kids start to take some visits as well. Speaking of visits, Rob, everything for basketball seems to be gearing up for the Georgia.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see them having an unofficial or two, for those first couple of weeks. But Jaden Springer, I think they're going to bring him in the Georgia weekend, and I would anticipate they will also bring Keon Johnson and Corey Walker in that weekend as well to try and create a little group chemistry. And I've said it before, and I mean I keep feeling good about Tennessee's chances right now with Springer, barring and with a talent like that, crazy things can happen. But I think Tennessee's in a really good spot with him going into the fall.
Yeah, they're the school that continues to stand at the top. Others keep shuffle around, but Tennessee seems to be staying there. Anything on the current roster right now? Just continue
waiting on Eurosh. I mean, that's the big.
But that doesn't seem like that's coming. Maybe late September.
Rick thinks maybe into September. I think that they just kind of hope to have an answer before practice starts in early October.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. So plenty of things going on. We'll continue to bring you full coverage of practice, full coverage of game prep. Many of our features returning. The S&P stock report will be coming back out tomorrow. We'll jump that back out at you. We'll have the matchup piece, the Rocky Top Roundtable. All of our game week content is back in full swing. Plenty of conversations with you on the message board as well. But that's going to do it for this edition.
Cajun stock down.
The Volquest.com podcast for Austin Price, Rob Lewis, and Jesse Simonton. I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you on Friday for our next podcast as Tennessee will be just hours away from kickoff against Georgia State.